Um, person who's going to be evaluating you is Lorraine Stan. Lorraine, you just want to maybe give us a little bit more there?
Couldn't find that mute button. Yeah, thank you very much. So Florian's speaking from the professional speaking track, and it is about developing and presenting a longer speech. As you have already said, the title is Toastmasters and COVID-19 in Numbers, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And Florian has asked if he can be recorded. I see that started, so that's fantastic. And Dorota, I hope you're comfortable. It is 18 to 22 minutes. So we're looking for green on 18, amber on 20, and red on 22. Looking very much forward. Please help me welcome Florian Bay with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Florian Bay.
Thank you very much for this welcome, and Andrew, and very good morning, Taverner Toastmasters. It's my pleasure to be there. There seems to be a bit of an African theme to me this week. I had a chat with somebody that's standing for the board from East Africa earlier this week, and I did visit a club in Johannesburg on Monday as well. So there's definitely a bit of a theme going on this week. And thank you to Paul Jensen for the opportunity of doing that presentation. So Toastmasters and COVID-19, what's been the impact on an organization? Let's kind of start to go back in time, shall we? This is my last ever in-person meeting in Toastmasters on Thursday, the 12th of March of this year. And we already couldn't do handshakes, so we did what the Toastmasters do. We innovate and we are being creative. And we did bum shakes instead, which are pretty good fun. Quite intimate, so may not be comfortable with everybody, but this was good fun. And I remember one thing before, as I was driving to this meeting, somebody was driving me from the train station. It was dark and I was filled with a sense of foreboding. Is this going to be the last in-person Toastmaster meeting I'll attend for a while? Events were already in motion, decisions were already made, and me and my program quality director had already had 2 calls that day. And as I came home at 11:30, we spent 3 hours on Zoom and made one decision and drafted a statement. That said, we strongly advise, in fact, all clubs in District 91 to start meeting online with immediate effect. Because COVID-19 was upon us, cases were increasing exponentially in the United Kingdom. We knew the direction of travel. It was only a matter of time before the entire country would be locked down. And the transformation took place pretty quickly, all things considered. A few days later, my own club of London Victorian was meeting online. This was our very first meeting. A number of people from other clubs came to check us out, just to see how this online meeting things was gone. We could even see the benefits of online meetings already. Our club president, Paulina, which you can see on the Zoom screen, actually dialed in from Gambia in Africa. She was meant to be there for a month, do some project of teaching English and working on building a school. And we were about to miss her for a month, but not quite, because with the magic of online meeting, she was able to dial in as if nothing had happened at all. So it seems that the transformation was almost seamless. An entire organization of 5,000 members and 180 clubs in District 91 switching online in less than a week. The kind of transformation that many businesses and multinationals would love to emulate. In fact, my program quality director said, we've done better than some multinationals. And a sentence I started to use a little bit sometime later is, we carried on meeting when McDonald's stopped serving. So all good. And indeed, district conference. We couldn't do it in person. We lost out on having amazing speakers flying in, but we had 1,000 attendees instead. Would we have been able to have 1,000 attendees in London? Not really, because a lot of these people came from Mexico, some came from Africa, some came from Eastern Europe. not all of these people would have been able to fly in and invest a couple of £100 in a plane tickets and hotel accommodation. So online is a really good thing. It's connecting online, we're striving in change and bringing the word in. Something that could be seen is we had so many people from all over the world. Lark Doley, our immediate past international president, was with us, and on this screen, some of the attendees were there. They came from all over the place. We had a blast, and I'm told that the after party lasted until 5 o'clock in the morning UK time. So we were even able to replicate a pub lock-in online. All great and good. What about the international convention? Did they do the same thing? Pretty much. There were over 40,000 attendees at the International Convention in August, which did create some technical issues. As some of you might remember at the start, they did not expect so many people, but instead the whole world came. Had this been in Paris, there would perhaps have been only 10% of that number, or maybe 12% if we'd been lucky. Not many people would have been there. So online is working. But what about the test of October renewals? Now, some numbers were being debated. It was almost like a betting shop in District 91 back in August and September. What will be our retention rate for October renewal this year? Is it going to be 50%? Is it going to be 60%? Is it going to be even lower than that? Because people are tired of online meetings and there is Zoom fatigue and people don't turn up. So this was the thing that had everybody on the edge of their seats, almost taking bet. It was almost like watching a race. What will the renewals rate be in the district or even worldwide for that matter? Well, we got data for that. And let's look at 2018. The retention rate for October renewal was 67%, which is pretty good. We're retaining 2/3 of our members. I'm sure that many businesses would love to retain 2/3 of their customers. 2019, almost the same for all intent and purposes. The variation is just almost within the statistic. But what about 2020? Would we crater? Would it be 60%? Would it even be 50%? In fact, as of yesterday, the number was pretty much the same as the last 2 years. And they may actually even go up slightly because some people renew in November, they renew quite late. I'm still chasing 3 people in London Victorians. So it seems that at first glance, Toastmasters has triumphed over COVID-19. We're meeting online as if nothing happened. We're having even more people coming to our events, and our retention rate is the same. It's great. We did it. We are an organization that's triumphing over adversity. Not quite. As with every story and every number, there are always 2 sides to it. Let's dig deeper, shall we? Let's use one of these mining equipments that you got in South Africa to dig golden cord and dig deep. Let's look at the number of clubs. And please unmute yourself. The next few minutes are going to be interactive. How many Toastmaster clubs were there on the 31st of October of this year? Unmute yourself and guess a number.
15,000.
1,000, okay. Another guess, please.
A better guess.
Another guess, please.
Are we talking about worldwide? I mean, there must be.
Worldwide, yes. All of these numbers are
like
worldwide.
40,000 clubs or something.
Sorry?
Aren't there something like 40,000 clubs or something worldwide?
Okay, we've got 40,000 clubs and 15,000 clubs. Okay, let's more numbers, please.
26,000.
26,000. And one last one.
30,000.
50,000. Okay. The number is actually pretty close to what Paul said, about 15,000. It's 14,600. But what about the numbers of members then? Now, have a guess.
So, Eric, sorry. arithmetically about 300,000, approximately.
About 300,000 members. Another guess, please.
I said exact the same number.
Okay. So
140,000.
140,000. And a third guess, please. We love the rule of three in Toastmasters, after all.
I'm glad Paul knows this stuff. That's the trouble. I think we better just listen to him. 300,000.
The number is actually 243 and 43,000. And as some of you might be wondering, but hold on, haven't we heard that there are 17,000 clubs worldwide and nearly 360 or 70 members? So the number looks different, right? Well, yes, they are different. And this is where it's good to compare, so to speak, with last year. Now, the first thing we're going to do is to compare the first 4 months of the Toastmaster years 2019-20 with 2020-2021. And the first 4 months of the Toastmaster year are always a little bit bloody in terms of the members, but it would make sense. We've got 3 months where in the summer, the teams are transitioning, they're taking over. We don't really quite know what we are doing. So we're not always as good as we could be at recruiting members and at retaining them in. And we've got the renewals taking place in September. You would expect a loss after renewal that might take a couple of months to recover. So losing clubs and members in the first 4 months is pretty normal. I mean, so far this year, we've lost about 25% of the members we had on July the 1st. That's about 60,000 members and 2,000 clubs lost. These numbers are scary, but when you look with them against last year, they're actually not that different. Okay, it's a bit more membership, a bit higher membership loss, but it's not that different, all things considered. So what is really going on? It doesn't really look that bad at first sight, does it? It means that, okay, I mean, we might be losing people, but retention is as good as last year. So is Toastmasters still doing well in terms of the members? Let's carry on and look at things in a different way. The numbers of club on October 31st. We know we've got about 14,600 clubs right now on the 31st of October 2020. But how does it compare with previous years? It's actually quite a bit lower than last year and even lower than in October 2018. In fact, that number that right now in October 2020, we'd potentially have to go back to 2016 or even 15 to find a similar number on the 31st of October. And what about membership? Would that show the same picture? Pretty much, unfortunately. It's nearly 50,000 fewer members compared to the same time last year. So clearly something is going on, but retention is as good as last year. So what is really going on? What is driving the process here? And this is where, unfortunately, there are some dangers ahead for the organization. What are they? Let's find out. Now, one metric that we can use again to look at the first 4 months of a Toastmasters year is to look at how many new members our clubs worldwide have recruited in the first 4 months of the year. We're not talking about charter members here. We're just talking about me. I want to join Taverner Toastmaster clubs potentially, and I would count as a new member recruited in the organization. It's new memberships rather than members, but that's how you define that metric. And this is where things get quite interesting. In the first 4 months of the current Toastmaster years, we're only recruiting about 2/3, the same number of members as last year. And this is what's one of the things that's driving a big drop in memberships. Only 2/3. And by the way, this is a picture for the entire world. In some districts, they're not even recruiting 1/3 of of the amount of members that they were able to recruit last year. For some of them, it's about half. Some of them are doing 80 and 90%. It all depends on the parts of the world you're in. And surprise, surprise, it matches very nicely with lockdowns and where the virus is the strongest at the moment. And another thing that's quite scary in my view is that our club seems to be shrinking right now. We're losing clubs and we're also losing members. And how many members do we need to charter a new Toastmaster club?
20, I think. Sorry.
If one of you wanted to create a new club right now, how many members would you need for this club to become officially part of Toastmasters International?
A base of 20?
20. Well done, Udi. So 20 is kind of the average club membership we need to aim for, because we get 20 people, and then because we're good at retaining them and we can recruit a few more, we'll be around 20. Well, actually, it seems to be shrinking at the moment. It was close to 20 in the past 2 years. I mean, 18 is still not as good as 20, but right now it's only about 16 and a half. And in some districts, it's actually only 14. So there's clearly something that's going on there. Our club seems to be shrinking in size slowly but surely. And the worldwide variations are actually quite fascinating when we start to look at them. Let's look at membership growth for a start. So far, in America and Europe, there's been a 30% loss in memberships over the first 4 months of the year. We've got 30% fewer members than we had on July the 1st. In Africa and South Asia, it's only 20%. In East Asia, it's only a 10% loss. Is there a lockdown in East Asia at the moment? Nope. China is powering on. They're meeting in person. It's almost as if the whole thing has never happened for them in some respect. Whereas in America and Europe, we're right in the thick of it, unfortunately. And winter's just starting. And if we look at membership recruitment, this is where the differences are really quite stark. And one continent is doing quite well, which is Africa. In Africa, there's a bit of a drop, but not as big as the other parts of the world, because again, surprise, surprise, there are no lockdowns and there's just more dynamic. The leadership seems to be far more proactive. So it's not hitting them as hard as it is hitting us in Europe or others in North America. But where does that lead us to fundamentally? You might be wondering. Okay, we're going down, but we're still retaining members. Well, even if we carry on retaining members in the same way as we did in the first in October, which was actually just as well as in previous years, we could be heading for a massive decline in Toastmasters membership. We're talking about fewer than 200,000 members worldwide on the 1st of April, which is effectively the equivalent to the organization shrinking by 40% in the space of a year compared to April 1st, 2020. Online membership growth is clearly a massive challenge. It almost seems as if VPM and PR worldwide are actually losing their minds over what's going on. I've heard anecdotal stories of guest details not being collected, guests not being told how they can pay for their membership, and PR becoming almost non-existent, which is like, hold on, we're meeting online. Surely PR must be quite easy to do because it's all about online. And you would think that some of those things would be almost easier than they were in person. Not quite. In some parts of the world, we got some districts that could essentially be wiped out. We're talking about districts finding themselves with maybe 500 to 600 members worldwide on April the 1st, 2021. Now, this is a projection. This is a model. You can always take these things with a slight pinch of salt. And interestingly, COVID-19 is accelerating a trend that was going on for the last 10 years of Toastmasters membership moving away from North America. North America becoming a smaller and smaller part of our membership. Well, thanks to COVID, in a way, a majority of the members will be from outside of North America next year. And as an organization, we might need to change significantly as a result. Now, This has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and I've spoken a lot. I don't know how we're doing for time, but I think we're still on the green light. So I will now be taking questions until we reach the red light.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I found one of the most interesting things you talked about there was not so much the change in the organization and the loss of members, but you were referring to our club's ability to perform public relations and attract members and sign them up and get their details. That's a big shortcoming for us. That's interesting.
It is. As an organization, we're effectively only as good as our worst district and as good as our worst club. And there are some clubs worldwide, they're very good at attracting members, at promoting and marketing themselves, but equally there are some that are really, really bad. One aspect, in my view, that still hasn't percolated through down to club leadership in ways that was perhaps expected is branding. Theoretically, there's like a unified Toastmaster branding that every clubs worldwide need to adhere to. Unfortunately, that still hasn't percolated down at the club level in some respect. You still have some clubs, they're using their own branding, they're doing their own thing. So there's a huge education effort that's needed there. And does it mean that we may have to have some form of centralized training for some officers with courses and something that's a lot more structured? Could be a way forward. It could be a way forward.
So,
Lorraine.
Florian, I
Go
think
ahead.
my question is really about, we've seen in Africa, certainly, so many people losing their jobs. So how much do you think the economics of being a member of a club is contributing to the inability to basically sign people up? Because I think we find people are willing to come as guests, but the membership fees at the moment can't be taken for granted.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
It will depend on the parts of the world, in my view. And there's two sides to that story. The first side to that story is to say, well, actually, $7.50 a month is not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money in Europe and in North America. And there are a lot of clubs in Europe and North America, they only charge $7.50 a month. Some may charge a bit more, but I mean, even in the United Kingdom, for my own club of Victoria, and we charge £15 a month now, we've reduced fees slightly. It's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things for an average wage earner in the United Kingdom. It's something that's well affordable. For some people, if they are on a pinch, they may have to take tough decision, but it's well affordable. But equally, if the $7.50 a month, even in Eastern Europe or in Africa or in South Asia, proportionally, it is significantly more. In terms of the average wage, the average cost of living there, it is significantly more. What's the answer to that? What's the solution to that? Does it mean that potentially we could look at some variable geometry membership fees depending on the region of the world? It could be a part of the world, but unfortunately, right now, economics are tough for everybody, and that's going to be one thing that's driving membership loss and lower retention as well. I mean, retention is kind of thing the same, but we would actually expect, in some ways, there's an argument that membership retention should be significantly higher right now, because it's easier than ever to attend meetings, and the clubs are smaller, therefore they should keep a core of they should be much more tightly knit. It's kind of happening in some places, not happening in some others. So there are many dynamics at work here. I'll take one final question.
I want to find out, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Some companies subsidize their workforce to join Toastmasters, and that may have fallen away as well, or at least become much more limited. So if people are not there because they want to, but because they've subsidized to do it, then obviously they will drop as well.
They will. And this has happened in many places worldwide already. Speaking of District 91, we have lost a number of corporate clubs because the company doesn't want to pay for Toastmasters anymore. They say it's not an essential expense at the moment. We're really at a pinch. They're cutting everything they can. And then the members don't always want to pay for themselves because they're in that mindset. They've been used to have the company paying for it, and therefore we're losing clubs that way, unfortunately. I mean, the real interesting question here, and we'll see, time will tell, is if lockdowns continue in North America, in Europe, if the economic situation doesn't improve, where will that leave Toastmasters on July the 1st, 2021? We'll be a much smaller organization than we were a year before. And if the 2021 is not a good year in terms of COVID, we still don't have a vaccine or whatever, we may have to make some very difficult decisions as an organization, unfortunately. The future could be interesting. And I'll leave it on this rather macabre note. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
You're muted, Andre.
That's probably the line from 2020. You're muted, Andre. Florian, fantastic presentation, absolutely outstanding. But may I say is that I've heard this presentation before in almost every single organization and club and sports organization. And so one of the things that I think we have to realize is that I heard a guy had a disciplinary hearing at one of the big banks the other day because his figures, which were his targets, which were set up in 2019, haven't been met in 2020. And I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you said to them you're going to sell so many X computers in 2020, and then 2020 comes and you just don't sell it. Well, obviously you don't. You're locked up in your house for 6 months, as were your clients. And I think the same thing is true for Toastmasters and every other organization. I think we're going to have to realize that this is not something that we've done wrong. This is a global epidemic of massive proportions. And for what we see, it's going to be even worse than what we thought, because I suspect that this second round is going to be even more interesting. And by the time that you finish your